أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And welcome back to Living the Quran through the Living Quran. In this series, we've been reviewing chapter number 56, Surah al-Waqiyah, the chapter of the great event, a reference to the day of resurrection. And this series is based upon the commentary written by His Eminence Sheikh Mohsin Qaraati in his Tafsir an-Nur. In our previous few discussions, God has shifted our attention to some of the proofs of His existence, some of the proofs also of the resurrection, because this is one of the things that people tend to deny, that the fact that how can God bring back the human being after they have died and decayed and their bones have turned to dust and perhaps even spread around the world. And so in these verses, God has been giving us points to reflect and think upon, and to show us His overarching level of power and authority in the entire world, and in the fact that even our creation is something very simple for Him to carry out, because He brought us forth to life in the first instance. Today we will look at the topic of the fire which we kindle under verses number 71 through to 74. So before we go into the commentary of these four verses, let us have a listen to the Arabic recitation, followed by the English translation, and then we'll come back and deliberate and review the commentary that Sheikh Mohsin Qaraati has provided for these four verses. Allah says the following in Surah al-Waqiyah.
أَفَرَأَيْتُمُ النَّارَ الَّتِي تُورُونَ أَأَنْتُمْ أَنشَأْتُمْ شَجَرَتَهَا أَمْ نَحْنُ الْمُنشِئُونَ
Have you given thought to the fire which you kindle? Is it you who produced the tree for kindling it into fire, or is it we, the producer of it?
نحن جعلناها تذكرة ومتاعا للمقوين فسبح باسم ربك العظيم.
We have made it a source of admonition for the people, and a means to live upon for the needy and the wayfarer. Glorify therefore the name of your Lord, the incomparably great. As for the commentary and the thinking points, let us first reflect on some of the words which Allah has used in this passage before we can better understand the summary of the verses under review for today. The word turun comes from the root word of wara'a, and it refers to extracting something which was hidden. The word wara'a, it means the inside of something or the backside of a thing. And when speaking about fire, and those things which are used to further grow the fire, and by using them the flames jump out, the term irah is used. And in the Hijaz, in the Arabian Peninsula, we should realize that there were two types of trees which were used to start a fire, just as people use two rocks as flint to light a fire even in today's day and age. The word mukwin comes from the word QAIM, and it means the open desert. And when speaking about a person who travels to the desert, the term muqawwi is often used in Arabic. In verse 48, in which there was a show of doubt about the resurrection, until this current verse under review, so for this passage of verses from 48 up until what we're currently looking at, which is verses 71 through to 74, Allah, God, has addressed humanity more than 20 times and has invited them to think and reflect on how things such as their crops, water, fire, and the creation themselves have come about, so that the doubts which the disbelievers may have would be removed. In these verses, the four elements of water, earth, wind, and fire have been spoken about. And all of these things, as we have seen and has been mentioned in these verses, are under the control of the orders of God. And through these things, these four elements, these are ways through which we can come to recognize God, and through which we can also realize His power. A total of 4 times in this chapter, God has taken a pledge from the people, asking them if He did not have a direct hand to play in creating the human being, sending down of rain, bringing forth the vegetation from the earth, and the creating of fire. Now keep in mind that the requirement for fire while living in the barren desert, as was the time of the revelation of these verses, is something which is much more needed than for those living in houses as in today's day and age. And so when we read these verses, we need to keep in mind first and primarily the audience who were receiving these verses. They lived in the desert. They didn't have heating. They didn't have lights as we have today. And so God was bringing forth these examples. However, obviously, still there is a lesson in these for us. Many people go on vacation. They go camping. They travel backpacking and hiking. And so fire is also a requirement for those individuals. And so we realize that the traveler in the desert needs the heat and the warmth which is offered by the fire, and also to protect themselves from the coldness. They also need fire to find their way during the dark nights and to ward off any wild animals while on their journey. And so fire plays a very important role in the lives of many people around the world. Let us conclude with a few takeaway messages that we can better think about to reflect upon the content of these verses. The first point to reflect upon is that the same God that is able to allow the creation of fire from deep inside wood and a tree, that same God who could bring about fire can also bring the dead who are buried deep in the ground back to life. Point number 2 is that bringing forth fire from wood can help to ignite the belief of the resurrection in 2 ways. One is based on the energy which is stored inside the wood, which is expelled in the form of the sparks and the fire itself, which emanates from the wood once it is lit. And the other is through the fire of the world, in which a person is reminded of the fire of the hellfire. Point number 3 is that God has mentioned all of that which is required to remove the belief of the resurrection as being something improbable from the minds of the people. Whether it has an effect on them or not, O Prophet, your responsibility after all of this is simply to glorify God, to glorify Allah. We ask God to allow us to better appreciate the content of Surah al-Waqiyah and all of the benefits and bounties and blessings which God has showered upon all of us. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.